Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Starbound, watching the stars through the main window. His ship was far from Earth now, farther than any human had ever traveled before. The mission was simple: explore new worlds and map the unknown regions of space. "Captain, we're getting something strange on the sensors," said Lisa Carter from her position at the navigation console. Her blonde hair was tied back as she focused on the readings. "There's a ship out there, but it doesn't match any design in our database." Jake walked over to look at the screen. The ship was sleek and silver with curves that seemed to flow like water. It was beautiful in a way that human ships never were. "How far away?" "About 10,000 kilometers in closing," Lisa replied. "They're moving slowly like they want to talk." Dr. Alex Turner looked up from his science station. The older man had gray hair and kind eyes behind his glasses. "This could be it, Captain. Our first contact with alien life." Jake felt his heart beat faster. After years of searching, they might finally meet someone else among the stars. "Kevin, open a channel." Kevin Brooks, their communications officer, worked at his console. He was young and nervous, but good at his job. "Channel open, sir." "Unknown." "Vessel, this is Captain Morrison of the Earthship Starbound. We come in peace and wish to communicate." For a moment, there was only silence. Then a voice came through the speakers. It sounded strange, like music mixed with words. "Earthship, we are the vessel Star Wind of the Zephyrian Collective. We are surprised to find you here." Jake smiled. "We're explorers from the planet Earth. We're mapping this region of space. Would you like to meet face to face?" Another pause. "Yes. We are curious about your kind. We will dock with your ship if you permit." An hour later, Jake stood in the docking bay with his senior officers. The airlock opened and 3 beings walked through. They were tall and thin, with blue-gray skin and large dark eyes. They wore flowing robes that seemed to shimmer in the light. The one in front stepped forward. "I am Commander Veltar of the Zephyrians. We have traveled far to explore as you have." Jake extended his hand. "Welcome aboard the Starbound. I'm Captain Morrison." Veltar looked at the offered hand for a moment, then reached out and touched it gently. A greeting custom. Interesting. They moved to the conference room where Jake had arranged refreshments. The aliens seemed fascinated by everything they saw. Veltar asked many questions about human culture and technology. "Your ship is well made," Veltar said. "You are a young species but skilled. Tell me, from which system do you come?" "Earth is in what we call the Sol system," Jake replied. "It's about 300 light-years from here, in the direction of that constellation." He pointed to a star chart on the wall. Suddenly, all 3 aliens went very still. Their large eyes grew even wider, and they looked at each other with what seemed like fear. "Sol system?" Veltar repeated slowly. "You come from there?" Dr. Turner leaned forward. "Is there a problem? Do you know our region of space?" Veltar stood up quickly. We must return to our ship immediately." Jake was confused. "Wait, what's wrong? Did we say something to offend you?" The alien commander turned back, and now Jake could see that Veltar was definitely afraid. "Your kind should not have ventured this far. The Atlas ends where you begin for good reason." "I don't understand," Jake said. "What Atlas? What reason?" But the aliens were already moving toward the door. Veltar paused only long enough to say, "Go home, humans. Go home and stay there. Some boundaries should not be crossed." After the aliens left, Jake's crew gathered on the bridge. Everyone was confused and worried. "What did that mean?" Lisa asked. "Why were they so scared when we told them where we're from?" Kevin checked his communications log. "I recorded the whole conversation. They seemed friendly until we mentioned Earth's location." Dr. Turner was studying the star charts. "They mentioned an atlas. That usually means a collection of maps or charts. But what did they mean that it ends where we begin?" Jake contacted Earth immediately. The message would take days to reach home and days more for a reply, but Admiral Patricia Hayes needed to know what had happened. A week later, the reply came. Admiral Hayes appeared on the main screen, her silver hair and stern face showing worry. Captain Morrison, your report is disturbing. This is the third contact we've had with alien species, and all of them have reacted the same way. They're friendly until they learn where we come from, then they become frightened and leave. Jake nodded. What do we know about the other contacts? The first was the survey ship Explorer 6 months ago. They met a race called the Malari near the outer rim. Same reaction. The second was the science vessel Discovery. They encountered something called the hegemony. Again, same pattern. Dr. Turner spoke up. Admiral, have any of these species explained why they're afraid of our region of space? No, Doctor. They all refuse to discuss it. But we've learned something interesting from the trade negotiations. Every alien species we've met has star charts, maps of known space. And in every single chart there's a blank area where our solar system should be. Lisa gasped. They don't map our space at all? It appears not, the Admiral said. It's as if our entire region simply doesn't exist in their galactic atlases. We need to find out why. Jake looked at his crew. What are your orders, Admiral? Continue your mission, Captain. But be careful. Find more alien species. Learn what you can. We need to understand why the galaxy seems to fear us, or at least fears where we come from. After the transmission ended, Jake's crew worked in silence. They were no longer just explorers mapping unknown space. They were investigators trying to solve a mystery that involved their entire species. Dr. Turner spent hours studying the recordings of their meeting with the Zephyrians. There's something here, he said finally. When Veltar mentioned the atlas ending where we begin, he wasn't just talking about maps. He said it like it was a rule, or maybe a law. Kevin looked up from his station. A law against mapping human space? Maybe, Turner replied. Or maybe something worse. Maybe a law against going there at all. Jake stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there were answers. Somewhere in the vast galaxy was the reason why every alien species seemed to know something about humanity that humans themselves didn't know. Set course for the next system, he ordered. We're going to find out what the galaxy is hiding from us. The Starbound turned and jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying its human crew deeper into the mystery that surrounded their very existence. Dr. Alex Turner worked late into the ship's night cycle, his eyes red from staring at alien text scrolling across his computer screen. The Starbound had been collecting alien databases for months now, trading human music and art for access to historical records from various species. Still at it, Alex? Dr. Rachel Stone entered the lab carrying 2 cups of coffee. The linguist was one of the newer additions to the crew, brought aboard specifically to help decode alien languages. Thanks, Alex said, accepting the coffee gratefully. I've been going through the Zephyrian historical records. There's a pattern here, Rachel. Look at this. Rachel pulled up a chair beside him. On the screen were dozens of alien symbols with human translations below them. What am I looking at? These are references to what they call the Silence Zone, Alex explained. It appears in records from at least 6 different species. Every time it's mentioned, it corresponds to the same coordinates. Rachel leaned closer. Our coordinates? Exactly. Our solar system, our local group, everything within about 50 light-years of Earth. They all call it the same thing, just translated differently. The Silence Zone, the Dead Sector, the Forbidden Reach. Ben Clark, the ship's archaeologist, joined them. He was a tall man with steady hands, useful for delicate work on alien artifacts. You two need to see this. I've been cataloging the artifacts we got from the Corvani traders last week. He placed a small device on the table. It looked like a crystal pyramid with metal wires running through it. This is a Corvani memory storage unit. It's old, maybe 10,000 years. But watch what happens when I activate it. Ben touched a spot on the device's base. Suddenly, holographic images appeared above it. They showed star charts, but not like any human charts. These were 3-dimensional maps of the galaxy, with different colors showing different territories. Beautiful, Rachel whispered. But look there. She pointed to a section of the map that was completely black. That's where we should be. Alex nodded grimly. The Corvani don't just avoid mapping our space. According to this, they actively mark it as forbidden territory. Captain Jake Morrison entered the lab. What have you found? Evidence that whatever is going on with our region of space, it's been going on for a very long time, Alex replied. Captain, I think we need to make contact with the Corvani directly. They're one of the oldest civilizations we know about. If anyone has answers, it's them. 3 days later, the Starbound approached a massive Corvani space station called Deep Harbor. The Corvani were different from the Zephyrians. They were shorter and stockier with rough skin like tree bark and forearms. But they were traders and scholars, and they had agreed to meet. Jake sat across from Elder Thekmoran in a conference room aboard the station. The old Corvani's eyes were very ancient, and he seemed to weigh every word carefully before speaking. "You wish to know about the region you call home," Thekmoran said. His voice was deep and slow. "This is dangerous knowledge, human captain." "We need to understand," Jake replied. "Every species we meet fears our space. We don't know why." Thekmoran was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "Our records go back 200,000 of your years. In that time, we have learned that some places in the galaxy are best left alone." Dr. Turner leaned forward. "What happened 200,000 years ago?" "The silence," Thekmoran said simply. "Before that time, our records show many civilizations in what you call the local group. Hundreds of worlds, millions of beings, great cities among the stars. Then over the span of just a few thousand years, they all went quiet." Rachel asked. "Went quiet how? War, disease, natural disaster? No distress signals, no signs of battle, no evidence of plague or catastrophe. They simply stopped communicating, stopped existing as far as anyone could tell. The last ships to visit that region never returned." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "And that's when your people started avoiding our space?" "Not just my people. All peoples. It became an unwritten law among the star-traveling races. The silent zone was to be left alone. Whatever had happened there, no one wanted to risk it happening to them." Ben showed the elder some images from their archaeological surveys. "We found ruins on several worlds. Ancient, but not that old. Maybe 100,000 years." Thekmoran studied the images carefully. "Yes, these match descriptions in our oldest records. Remnants of the civilizations that went silent. You have been living among the graves of the lost." After the meeting, Jake's crew was somber. They had answers, but the answers only led to more questions. 200,000 years ago, Alex said as they gathered in the ship's mess hall. "That's around the time early humans were first developing intelligence on Earth." Lisa looked up from her meal. "You think that's connected?" "I don't know," Alex admitted. "But the timing is strange." Kevin had been quiet during dinner. Finally, he spoke up. "What if we're not the first humans to reach the stars?" Everyone turned to look at him. "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "Think about it," Kevin said. "What if humans reached space before a long time ago? What if we were one of the civilizations that went silent?" Rachel shook her head. "That's impossible. Human civilization is only a few thousand years old. We just developed space travel in the last century. But what if something made us forget?" Kevin continued. "What if something happened that sent us back to the Stone Age and we had to start over?" Dr. Turner was thoughtful. "It would explain why aliens fear our region of space. If ancient humans were responsible for the silence, then modern humans coming back to the stars would terrify them." Jake stood up. "This is all speculation. We need more evidence." Over the next few weeks, the crew worked tirelessly to gather more information. They contacted other alien species, traded for more historical records, and studied every piece of evidence they could find. The pattern was always the same. 200,000 years ago, something had happened in human space that had frightened the entire galaxy. Whatever it was had been so terrible that no civilization had dared to return there since. "Captain," Alex said one morning, "I've been thinking about what the Zephyrian commander said. The Atlas ends where you begin. What if he meant that literally?" "How so?" "What if human space isn't just avoided because it's dangerous? What if it's avoided because it's where the known galaxy actually ends? What if there's something beyond our space that the galaxy doesn't want to find?" Jake looked at the star charts on his wall. Earth was marked with a small blue dot, surrounded by vast areas of unexplored space. "You're suggesting that we're not just living in a dead zone. We're living on the border of something else entirely." "Maybe," Alex said, "or maybe we are that something else. Maybe the reason the galaxy fears our space is because they're afraid of us." As the Starbound prepared to continue its journey, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Somewhere in the dark between the stars, ancient eyes were following their progress. The mystery was deepening, and with each new piece of information, humanity seemed less like innocent explorers and more like something the galaxy had very good reasons to fear. The planet looked peaceful from orbit. Green forests covered most of the surface, with blue oceans and white clouds swirling in familiar patterns. Captain Jake Morrison decided to call it Haven 7, the seventh world they had surveyed in this system. No signs of current life, reported Dr. Sarah Kim from her biology station. The xenobiologist was excited about every new world they found. But I'm reading some interesting mineral formations. There might be fossils down there. And something else, added Matt Reynolds, the ship's geologist. I'm seeing geometric patterns in the northern continent. Too regular to be natural. Jake studied the surface scans. The patterns Matt mentioned looked like the remains of ancient cities. Dr. Stone, what do you think? Rachel Stone examined the images carefully. If those are ruins, they're old. Very old, but the architecture looks familiar somehow. Familiar how? Jake asked. I can't put my finger on it. Something about the way the structures are arranged. It reminds me of human city planning, but that's impossible. Jake made his decision. We're going down for a closer look. Dr. Turner, Dr. Stone, Matt, and Sarah, you're with me. Ben, bring your archaeological equipment. The shuttle landed near the largest cluster of ruins. As they stepped outside, Jake was struck by how much the world felt like Earth. The air was clean and breathable. The gravity was comfortable, even the sunlight felt warm and natural. Definitely artificial, Ben said, running his hands over a stone wall. These blocks were cut and fitted together, advanced construction techniques. Sarah was examining the plant life growing around the ruins. Captain, this is strange. These plants aren't native to this world. How can you tell? They don't fit the ecosystem. Look at these flowers. She showed him a cluster of small purple blossoms. They're pollinated by insects that don't exist here. But they're thriving anyway, Matt called out from deeper in the ruins. You all need to see this. They followed his voice through a maze of broken walls until they found him standing before a massive stone archway. It was covered in carvings that were still clear after countless years. The carvings show figures, Ben said, studying them closely. Humanoid, but not quite human. They're taller, more graceful. But the proportions are definitely human-like. Rachel traced one of the carved figures with her finger. Look at this. They're holding tools, but also what looks like stars. Like they're gardening with solar systems. Dr. Turner was scanning the stone with his instruments. This is incredibly old. At least 150,000 years, maybe 200,000. Jake felt that chill again. The same time period as the silence. They spent the rest of the day exploring the surface ruins. Everything they found seemed to support the same impossible conclusion. An advanced civilization had lived here long ago, and they had been remarkably similar to humans. Captain, Sarah called out, I found an entrance to underground chambers. The entrance was hidden beneath fallen stones, but their equipment quickly cleared the way. Jake led the team down ancient stairs carved into living rock. Their lights revealed corridors that stretched into darkness. The air is still good, Matt reported. Whatever they built down here, it was meant to last. The underground complex was vast. Room after room filled with strange devices. Most of them broken or corroded beyond recognition. But some things had survived. In the deepest chamber, they found something that made everyone stop and stare. The walls were covered in murals, painted in colors that still seemed fresh. The images showed the story of a great civilization. It's like a history book, Rachel whispered. Look, this shows them building cities among the stars, and this one shows them traveling between worlds. The murals told a story of incredible achievement. The beings depicted in the paintings had mastered space travel, built cities on countless worlds, and seemed to control the very forces of nature. But the later paintings showed something different. Conflict, Ben observed. This section shows them fighting with other species. And this looks like they're doing something to themselves. The final mural was the most disturbing. It showed the tall figures standing around what looked like a vast machine. Above them, stars were going dark one by one. They're turning off the lights, Jake said quietly. They're making their own civilization disappear. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal with a device that was still intact. It looked like a crystal sphere surrounded by metal rings, similar to the Corvani memory storage device they had seen before. Should we activate it? Dr. Turner asked. Jake hesitated. Everything they had learned suggested that the beings who had built this place were connected to the mystery of the Silent Zone. Activating their technology could be dangerous. Do it, he decided. We need answers. Dr. Turner touched the device carefully. It began to glow with a soft blue light, and suddenly the chamber filled with holographic images. The images showed the history of the beings who had lived here. They called themselves the architects, and they had indeed built a great civilization among the stars. But something had gone wrong. The holographic records showed the architects becoming more and more powerful. They learned to manipulate matter at the atomic level, to fold space and time, to influence the fundamental forces of the universe. But with that power came corruption. They became gods, Rachel said, watching the images. And gods don't care about mortals. The later records showed the architects treating other species as experiments. They moved planets for their convenience, deleted entire species that annoyed them, and rebuilt reality to suit their desires. Finally, other civilizations had enough. The records showed a great war, with dozens of species uniting against the architects. But the architects were too powerful to defeat by conventional means. The final records were fragmentary, but they told a clear story. Facing inevitable defeat, the architects had chosen to do something unprecedented. Rather than face destruction, they would erase themselves from existence. The hologram showed the last of the architects working on a massive project. They called it the Great Forgetting. They would use their mastery over reality to delete their own civilization, their own memories, their very evolutionary development. But they wouldn't just die. They would scatter their essence across the galaxy, seeding primitive worlds with their consciousness. They would be reborn as simple beings and forced to begin again. They chose to start over, Jake said in amazement. They wiped themselves out and started fresh as primitive species. Sarah was studying the star charts shown in the hologram. Look at this. They show dozens of worlds being seeded with architect consciousness, and one of them, she pointed to a small star system shown in the projection. Jake's blood ran cold as he recognized the configuration. That's our solar system, he said. That's Earth. The implications hit everyone at the same time. Humans weren't just living in the ruins of an ancient civilization. They were the descendants of that civilization. The architects had erased themselves and been reborn as humanity. Matt sat down heavily on a broken stone. No wonder the galaxy is afraid of our space. We're living where the most powerful and dangerous civilization in galactic history used to live. But we're not them, Rachel protested. We're different. We're better. Ben was still studying the murals. Are we? Look at this section again. It shows the early architects. They look just like us, young, curious, eager to explore, just like humanity is now. Jake felt the weight of the discovery settling on his shoulders. The aliens aren't afraid of where we live. They're afraid of what we might become. Dr. Turner was recording everything, his scientific mind working furiously. This explains everything. The silent zone, the missing star charts, the fear we see in every alien species. They all remember what the architects did, and they know that if humans follow the same path, we could become monsters again, Jake finished. As they prepared to return to the ship, Jake looked back at the ancient chamber. The architects had tried to escape their nature by forgetting who they were. But memories had a way of returning. The question was, would humanity repeat the mistakes of their ancestors, or would they find a different path among the stars? Outside, the alien sun was setting, casting long shadows across the ruins of a civilization that had chosen oblivion rather than face the consequences of its own power. And somewhere among those shadows, the future of the galaxy was waiting to be decided. The coordinates led them to the very edge of what galactic maps called the Silent Zone. As the starbound dropped out of faster-than-light travel, Jake Morrison and his crew stared at something that should not exist. A space station hung in the darkness between stars. It was enormous, easily the size of a small moon, built from materials that seemed to bend light around them. Despite its obvious age, it hummed with power and purpose. How is it still functional? Dr. Turner asked, studying his instruments. According to these readings, it's at least 200,000 years old. The same age as the architect ruins, Rachel Stone added quietly. Jake made the decision to dock. After what they had learned on Haven 7, they needed answers more than they needed safety. Whatever's in there, it's been waiting for us. The docking bay opened automatically as they approached, as if the station had been expecting them. The starbound settled into place with a soft hiss of equalizing atmosphere. Life support is working, reported Sarah Kim. The air is breathable. Whatever built this place, they planned for visitors. Jake led a small team through the airlock. Ben Clark and Nicole Davis, their newest communications specialist, came with him while the others monitored from the ship. The corridors inside the station were vast and empty, but they didn't feel abandoned. Soft lights came on as they walked, and Jake had the strange sensation that they were being watched. The architecture is different from the architect ruins, Ben observed. More flowing, more organic, but still clearly advanced technology. They followed the main corridor until it opened into a massive chamber, and there, waiting for them, was a being unlike any they had encountered before. It was tall and thin, almost ethereal, with skin that seemed to shift between silver and blue. Its eyes were ancient and sad, and when it spoke, its voice echoed with the weight of millennia. "Welcome, children of Earth," it said. "I am Keeper Morveth of the Watchers. We have been waiting for you to find us." Jake stepped forward carefully. "You're not human, but you're not like the other aliens we've met either." "No," Morveth agreed. "We are what remains of the Architect's servants. When your ancestors chose the Great Forgetting, they tasked us with watching over their scattered children. We have maintained that vigil for 200,000 years. Nicole activated her recording equipment. "You know who we are? What we are? You are the descendants of the greatest and most terrible civilization the galaxy has ever known," Morveth replied. "You are the children of gods who chose to become mortal rather than face the consequences of their actions." The Keeper led them deeper into the station, to a chamber filled with advanced technology that hurt to look at directly. Screens showed images from across the galaxy, monitoring hundreds of different worlds. The architects did not just seed one world, Morveth explained. They scattered their essence across thousands of planets. Most of the resulting species developed into peaceful, unremarkable civilizations. They were content to live simple lives, never reaching for the stars. Jake studied the screens. He could see dozens of different humanoid species, all living on primitive worlds. But not us. Not Earth's humans, Morveth confirmed. "From the beginning, you were different. You retained something the others lost. The drive to explore, to grow, to reach beyond your limitations. You are the only architect descendants to achieve space travel." Dr. Turner joined them, having been called from the ship. "That's why the galaxy fears us. They remember what the original architects became. And they see the same patterns emerging in humanity," Morveth said sadly. "Your rapid technological advancement, your curiosity about the universe, your desire to spread among the stars. It all mirrors the early days of the architect civilization." Ben was examining the monitoring equipment. "You've been watching us specifically?" "Since your species first looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there," Morveth replied. "We have watched every step of your development, hoping you would choose a different path than your ancestors." Nicole asked the question they were all thinking. "And have we?" Morveth was quiet for a long moment. "You have shown promise, your capacity for cooperation, your concern for other species, your attempts at peaceful contact. But you have also shown the same hunger for knowledge and power that corrupted the architects." The Keeper activated a large display that showed Earth's solar system. "Your people believe they are alone, that they developed naturally from primitive animals. This is partially true. The architects seeded your world with their consciousness, but they did not control your development. You grew on your own, shaped by your environment and experiences. But the architect memories are still there," Jake said. "It wasn't a question. Dormant but present. And now that you have begun to travel among the stars, those memories are starting to wake up." Dr. Turner pulled out his scanner and ran it over himself. "The DNA sequences we found in the ruins. They're activating in human genetic code. Your exposure to cosmic radiation, to the energies between stars, to contact with other species," Morveth explained. "All of these things are triggering changes in human consciousness. You are beginning to remember what you once were." Jake felt a chill. "What happens when we remember everything?" "That depends on what you choose to do with those memories," Morveth replied. "The architect's knowledge includes the ability to manipulate matter at the quantum level, to fold space and time, to reshape reality itself. With such power, they became convinced that they were superior to all other life." Sarah joined them from the ship, bringing more crew members. "But we're not the same people who made those choices," she protested. "We've learned about cooperation, about ethics, about caring for others. Have you?" Morveth asked gently. "Or have you simply not yet gained enough power to be tempted by it?" The Keeper showed them more images, these of Earth's recent history. Wars, environmental destruction, the exploitation of weaker nations by stronger ones. Your species shows the same capacity for both great good and great evil that marked the architects. Nicole was taking notes frantically. What do the other galactic civilizations want to do about this? They are divided, Morveth admitted. Some believe humanity should be destroyed before you can become a threat. Others think you should be contained, kept isolated in your region of space. A few hold hope that you might choose differently than your ancestors did. Jake looked at his crew, seeing his own concerns reflected in their faces. And what do you think we should do? I have watched your species for millennia, Morveth said. I have seen your capacity for growth, for learning from mistakes, for choosing sacrifice over selfishness. But I have also seen how power corrupts, how good intentions can lead to terrible actions. The Keeper led them to another section of the station, where massive windows looked out at the stars. The choice is yours to make. You can return to Earth, accept memory modification to forget what you have learned, and agree to remain isolated. The galaxy would leave you in peace, Jake asked. Or you can continue on your current path, knowing that you will inevitably regain the full power of the architects. You will face the same temptations they did, the same choice between using your power to help others or to control them. Dr. Turner was studying readings from his instruments. The DNA changes aren't limited to our crew, are they? They're happening to humans throughout space. To all humans who have left Earth's atmosphere, Morveth confirmed. The process has already begun and cannot be stopped. Within a generation, perhaps two, your species will remember everything. Ben asked, what happened to the other Watcher stations? Are you the only one left? The others have shut down over the millennia as their assigned worlds chose peaceful, simple lives. I am the last because Earth's humans are the last architect descendants to reach for the stars. Jake stared out at the vast galaxy spread before them. Somewhere out there, entire civilizations were afraid of what humanity might become, and perhaps they had good reason to be afraid. There's something else, Morveth said quietly. Something the galaxy doesn't know. The genetic awakening isn't happening just on Earth. 3 other architect-seeded worlds have begun to show the same signs. Your arrival in galactic space has triggered something that was dormant for 200,000 years. The implications were staggering. Not just humanity, but multiple architect-descendant species were beginning to remember their true nature. The galaxy's worst fears might be about to come true. As they prepared to return to their ship, Jake asked one final question. If you were in our position, what would you choose? Morveth's ancient eyes were sad but kind. I would choose to remember that power without wisdom is the path to destruction, and I would hope that 200,000 years of growth and experience have taught you something your ancestors never learned. The truth was out now. Humanity stood at a crossroads that would determine not just their own future, but the future of the entire galaxy. Keeper Morveth led Captain Jake Morrison and his crew deeper into the ancient station, to chambers that had not been opened for thousands of years. The walls here were covered in crystalline, displays that showed the complete history of the architect, civilization. The story I am about to tell. You will change how you see yourselves and your place in the universe, Morveth said, his ethereal voice filled with ancient sorrow. It is the true history of your species, and the reason why the galaxy lives in fear of your return. Dr. Nicole Davis activated every recording device she had while Dr. Turner prepared his scientific instruments. Rachel Stone sat ready to translate any alien text they might encounter. Show us, Jake said simply. Morveth touched a control, and the chamber filled with holographic images of incredible beauty. They showed a galaxy teeming with life, with thousands of species living in harmony among the stars. This was the galaxy 250,000 years ago, Morveth explained. Young civilizations learning from older ones, trade and culture flowing freely between worlds. It was a time of peace and growth. The images changed, showing a solar system that Jake recognized as humanity's home region. But instead of the quiet worlds they knew, these planets bustled with massive cities and space stations. And then came the architects, your ancestors. They emerged from what you now call the local group and began to explore the galaxy. At first they were welcomed. They were brilliant, creative, eager to learn and share knowledge. Jake watched his ancient ancestors meeting with the same alien species his crew had encountered. The early meetings looked friendly, full of wonder and mutual respect. What changed? Sarah Kim asked. Power. Morveth replied simply. The architects learned quickly, too quickly. Within a few thousand years, they had advanced beyond every other civilization in the galaxy. They developed technology that seemed like magic even to other spacefaring races. The holographic displays showed architect cities that defied physics, ships that moved faster than light without engines, and beings who could manipulate matter with their thoughts alone. They discovered how to influence the fundamental forces of the universe, Morveth continued. Gravity, electromagnetism, the strong and weak nuclear forces. To them, these became tools as simple as hammers and nails. Dr. Turner was taking frantic notes. That's impossible. The energy requirements alone would be impossible for current human science, Morveth agreed. But the architects found ways to tap into the quantum foam itself, to draw power from the vacuum of space. They became gods among mortals. The images changed again, showing the architects' growing influence across the galaxy. They reshaped planets to suit their needs, moved stars to create more convenient travel routes, and began to treat other species as curiosities rather than equals. At first, their interventions seemed helpful, Morveth said. They prevented wars, cured diseases, solved resource shortages, but they did these things without asking permission, without considering that other species might want to solve their own problems. Ben Clark was studying the architectural displays. They became control freaks. They couldn't stand seeing things they considered imperfect. Exactly. And their definition of imperfect grew broader with each passing century. Species that were too aggressive were modified to be peaceful. Worlds that were too chaotic were reorganized. Civilizations that developed too slowly were accelerated, sometimes destroying their cultures in the process. The holographic records became darker, showing the architects conducting vast experiments on entire star systems. They created artificial life forms, deleted species they found redundant, and rearranged galactic geography to suit their artistic vision. They saw themselves as gardeners tending the galaxy, Morveth explained. But they were gardeners who thought they knew better than nature itself. Rachel was pale as she watched images of worlds being transformed against their inhabitants' will. This is horrifying. They were playing with entire civilizations like toys. The worst part, Morveth continued, was that they genuinely believed they were helping. In their minds, they were bringing order to chaos, beauty to ugliness, perfection to a flawed universe. They could not understand why other species began to fear and resent them. The displays showed the growing resistance to architect control. At first, it was just protests and diplomatic complaints. But as the architects' interventions became more invasive, the resistance became violent. The war began when the architects decided to fix the Corvani species, Morveth said. The Corvani had always been traders and scholars, but they were also individualistic and chaotic. The architects decided this was inefficient. Jake watched in horror as the holographic displays showed architect ships descending on Corvani worlds, using their reality manipulation technology to alter the very minds of the population. They tried to turn the Corvani into a unified collective consciousness, Morveth explained. More efficient, more productive, more perfect in their eyes. But the Corvani saw it as the murder of their individual souls. The war that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Conventional weapons were useless against beings who could alter the laws of physics. But the other species had numbers and determination. It lasted 50,000 years, Morveth said quietly. Entire star systems were destroyed. Billions of beings died. The architects kept saying they were trying to bring peace even as they used their godlike powers to defend themselves. Sarah was horrified. 50,000 years of war. How did it finally end? The architects began to lose. Not because the other species became stronger, but because the architects began to turn on each other. Some of them started to question what they had become. The holographic displays showed architects' civil war, reality manipulating gods fighting among themselves while the galaxy burned around them. The faction that won called themselves the Penitent, Morveth explained. They realized that power without wisdom had made them into monsters. But they also knew that simply stopping wouldn't undo the damage they had caused. Dr. Turner looked up from his instruments. So they chose the Great Forgetting. Yes, but it was more than just erasing their memories. They used their mastery over reality to literally delete their civilization from existence. Every city, every ship, every piece of technology. They scattered their consciousness across thousands of primitive worlds and forced themselves to start over as Stone Age beings. Jake felt the weight of this revelation. They committed civilizational suicide rather than face the consequences of what they had become. It was the only way to break the cycle, Morveth said. They hoped that by starting over, by growing up again in different environments, their descendants might choose a different path. Nicole had been recording everything, but now she looked up with a troubled expression. But you said that other architect worlds are showing signs of awakening. It's not just Earth, Morveth nodded gravely. 3 other worlds. Kepler 442b in the Lyra constellation has developed space travel and begun showing the same genetic changes. Gliese 667cc has achieved nuclear fusion and is accelerating rapidly, and Ross 128b has just made first contact with a neighboring species. The implications hit everyone at once. Multiple architect descendant species were approaching the same crossroads that humanity faced. The galaxy doesn't know this yet, Morveth continued, but they will soon, and when they do, their fear will turn to panic. The prospect of one returning architect species terrifies them. The possibility of 4 returning simultaneously would make them desperate enough to try anything to stop us, Jake finished. Ben was studying the star charts shown in the holographic displays. Where are these other worlds? How long before they reach the same level as humanity? Kepler 442b's inhabitants call themselves the Kalani. They should achieve faster than light travel within 50 Earth years. The others will follow within a century. Dr. Turner was working frantically with his scanner. The genetic changes in our crew are accelerating. Whatever cosmic radiation or quantum field effect is triggering the memories, it's getting stronger. Sarah checked her own readings. I can feel it sometimes. Like there's something just at the edge of my consciousness, trying to remember itself. Morveth led them to a final chamber, where the wall showed not historical records but current galaxy-wide communications. They could see alien species in urgent discussions, fleets moving toward human space, and emergency councils being called. The galaxy knows something is happening, Morveth explained. Your presence among the stars has been noticed by civilizations that have been watching for signs of architect return for 200,000 years. They are preparing for war. Jake stared at the displays showing massive alien fleets. How long do we have? Perhaps a year before they reach Earth. Less if they decide that preemptive action is necessary. The crew of the Starbound stood in silence, absorbing the magnitude of what they had learned. They were the descendants of gods who had chosen to become mortal, but the galaxy remembered what those gods had done, and they would not allow history to repeat itself. There has to be another choice, Rachel said finally. Some way to prove that we're not going to become what our ancestors were. Morveth's ancient eyes held a glimmer of hope. There is, but it will require humanity to make the most difficult decision in its history. And the emergency session aboard the Starbound was unlike any meeting in human history. Captain Jake Morrison sat with his senior officers while Keeper Morveth participated via holographic link from the Watcher station. On the main screen, they could see real-time images of alien fleets gathering at the edges of human space. The Galactic Council has made their decision, Morveth reported, his ethereal voice heavy with centuries of weariness. They are calling it the final containment. They plan to destroy every human colony outside Earth's solar system and establish a permanent blockade. Dr. Turner looked up from his genetic scanner. The readings had been climbing steadily for days now.
How long until they reach us?
The first fleets will arrive at your outer colonies within 6 months, Morveth replied. The main force will reach Earth in 10 months. Jake studied the tactical displays. Hundreds of alien ships were moving toward human space, representing dozens of different species united by a single purpose, preventing the return of the architects. We could fight, suggested Matt Reynolds, though his voice lacked conviction. Our technology is advancing rapidly. Some of our engineers are already building things they don't fully understand. That's exactly the problem, Dr. Sarah Kim said quietly. She held up her own scanner readings. I'm designing biological systems that shouldn't be possible. Yesterday I created a virus that could theoretically adapt to any environment in real time. I don't remember learning how to do that. Rachel Stone nodded grimly. The same thing is happening to me with language systems. I've been unconsciously developing translation algorithms that work by reading quantum brain patterns. The knowledge just appears in my mind. Nicole Davis had been monitoring communications from Earth. It's not just our crew. Reports are coming in from research stations throughout human space. Scientists and engineers are making breakthrough discoveries but can't explain how they knew what to do. Ben Clark was examining artifacts they had brought back from the Architect ruins. These tools are starting to make sense to me. I can see how they work, what they're for. It's like remembering something I learned long ago. Jake felt the changes in himself too. Navigation had become intuitive in ways that defied explanation. He could sense the gravitational flows between stars, feel the quantum currents that connected all matter in the universe. The awakening is accelerating, Morveth confirmed. Exposure to deep space, contact with alien species, the discovery of your true history. All of these factors are triggering genetic memories that have been dormant for 200,000 years. Chris Thompson, their youngest navigation officer, spoke up from his station. Sir, I've been analyzing the data we collected about the other Architect worlds. The colony on Kepler 442b have just achieved faster-than-light travel. They're already expanding beyond their home system. And they don't know what they are, Jake said. It wasn't a question. No, Morveth replied. None of the awakening worlds understand their true nature yet. They think they're simply experiencing rapid technological advancement, but the galaxy is watching them all. Dr. Turner pulled up genetic data from multiple sources. Captain, I've discovered something important. The awakening isn't random. The genetic sequences that are activating follow a specific pattern. What kind of pattern? The memories are returning in the same order they developed originally. First comes intuitive understanding of physics and engineering, then biological manipulation, then control over fundamental forces. Sarah went pale. How long until the final stage? Based on the progression rate, I estimate 18 months until humans begin manifesting direct matter manipulation abilities, 2 years until we can reshape reality itself. The implications hung heavy in the air. Within 2 years, humanity would have the power that had made the original architects into galactic tyrants. The aliens weren't just afraid of what humans might become, they were afraid of what humans inevitably would become. There has to be a third option, Jake said. Some way to prevent this without accepting imprisonment or extinction. Morveth's holographic form shimmered as he accessed deeper records. There is one possibility, but it would require humanity to make a choice that no species has ever made willingly. Tell us. The Architect's knowledge exists in your genetic code, but it requires specific trigger conditions to activate. Deep space exposure, contact with alien quantum fields, proximity to certain stellar phenomena. If humanity were to avoid these triggers, we'd remain as we are, Rachel finished. Never develop beyond our current level. Not quite, Morveth corrected. You would continue to develop naturally, but without accessing the Architect legacy. It would take you perhaps 1,000,000 years to achieve what the awakening will give you in decades. Ben shook his head. That's not a real choice. You're asking us to voluntarily limit our potential, to accept artificial constraints on human development. I'm offering you the chance to develop wisdom before you gain ultimate power, Morveth replied. The Architect's great failure was gaining godlike abilities before they learned how to use them responsibly. Jake looked at his crew, seeing the same conflict in their faces that he felt in his heart. What about the other worlds? The Kalani and the others? They face the same choice, though they don't know it yet. If any of the awakening species chooses to pursue the full Architect legacy, the galaxy will consider it an existential threat. Nicole had been monitoring long-range communications. Captain, I'm picking up transmissions from the alien fleets. They're not just planning to contain us. Some factions are arguing for complete sterilization of all Architect-descended worlds. The weight of the decision pressed down on everyone in the room. Humanity stood at a crossroads that would determine not just their future, but potentially the future of the entire galaxy. There's another factor to consider, Dr. Turner said quietly. The genetic awakening isn't evenly distributed. Some humans are changing faster than others. What happens if part of our species chooses one path and part chooses another? Jake had been thinking the same thing. Civil war. Just like the original Architects. Chris Thompson looked up from his navigation console. Sir, I've been thinking about something Morveth said earlier. The awakening was triggered by our expansion into space. But what if we could control the triggers? Explain. What if we established colonies in regions where the awakening effect is minimal? Places where humans could expand naturally without accessing the Architect memories? Morveth seemed intrigued by this suggestion. Theoretically possible, There are regions of space where the quantum conditions wouldn't trigger rapid awakening. But you would need to establish strict controls over space travel and research. A voluntary limitation on human expansion, Sarah said thoughtfully. Choosing our own boundaries instead of having them imposed by aliens. Jake stood and walked to the main viewing port. Outside, the stars seemed different now that he knew the truth about humanity's place among them. Each point of light potentially held civilizations that remembered the architect's tyranny. We're not the same people who made those choices 200,000 years ago, he said finally. We've learned about cooperation, about respect for other species, about the value of diversity and individual freedom. Have you? Morveth asked gently. Or have you simply not yet gained enough power to be truly tempted? It was the question that haunted them all. Would humanity choose differently than their ancestors had? Or would absolute power corrupt them absolutely, just as it had corrupted the architects? I want to make contact with the other awakening worlds, Jake decided. If we're going to face this choice, we should face it together. And if some of them choose differently than we do? Jake was quiet for a long moment, considering the implications. Then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But first we need to go home. Earth needs to know the truth about what we are and what we're choosing between. As the Starbound prepared to leave the Watcher station, Morveth appeared one final time on their screens. Remember, the ancient being said, the choice you make will echo through eternity. The galaxy watches and waits to see if humanity will repeat the mistakes of the past or forge a new path among the stars. The ship turned toward home, carrying with it the most important decision in human history. Behind them, alien fleets continued their advance toward human space, while ahead lay a future that would be shaped by choices no species had ever been forced to make. Humanity stood at the threshold between godhood and wisdom, and the clock was ticking toward a decision that would determine the fate of the galaxy itself. In the end, the secrets that terrified the stars weren't about humanity's past. They were about humanity's future, and the power to choose what that future would become.